Everybody, thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking, this is our second time that we have actually had the topic diversity in the fashion industry. And today we're going to be talking about the importance of having a diverse marketing team to help your company avoid making some very embarrassing mistakes. Which I have made a list of, which are quite shocking once I made the list. So we will go ahead and welcome everybody. Arkeah, tell us where you're from and what you do.
Hi, I'm Arkeah. I'm currently in Atlanta. I am the New Faces Director of HOP Models and Talent Agency.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate having you here on the first time. And then, hi, Itsu, how are you?
Hi, how are you, Melissa? I'm Itsu Evans. I'm a celebrity shoe designer, style correspondent, and the creative director of Harlem World Magazine.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us. And you're in New York City, right?
Absolutely.
And your internet, you avoided the worst of the storms.
Well, we got a lot of the branches that fell down, and a lot of the actual gates were kind of shredded.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's pretty. We've had several members of our panel just be cut out. Like some people are saying like they're cut out for 2 weeks with electricity in the area.
Pretty bad. It's about 2,300 in Brooklyn.
Oh, goodness, that's tough. So Eddie, thank you for joining us today. How's it going down in Miami?
It is going out very well. Pleasure to be a part of this esteemed panel. It's hot, it's sunny, about 95 degrees. I'm sorry, E2, you know, Me and Arkeah, we in the southern hot states right now. For no reason. So yes, we're safe.
Good. Well, you know, I heard this morning that there's going to be at least 3 really bad storms. So I hope you guys stay clear of it. But I know Miami's sometimes in the middle of that. Wendy, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks, Melissa, for having me on the panel again. Yeah, always a pleasure.
Wonderful.
So I am Brooklyn based, and I'm founder and creative director of Visual Conductor, which is a boutique design studio where we bring brands to life through virtual and live events. Experiential.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. So last month we had our first diversity in the fashion industry event, and we had such a great response from it that we wanted to start doing this every single month because there's so many things to talk about, and we think that it was really good for everybody to just be able to dig into some of these issues. So we wanted to take things one at a time. Some of the issues that came up in the first session, and then just also we'd love to get feedback from the attendees, what kind of topics you would like us to share. You can put those ideas in the comments and then we'll review them. And also, if you have any questions for the panelists while we're doing the conversation, just put it in the comments and then we will get to it before the end of the meeting. Okay, so one thing that was very obvious to me and to everybody when the protests started happening in May for Black Lives Matter was that, the fashion industry, the people, the companies, not just the fashion industry, but the companies that constantly, are pushing out a lot on social media, immediately started being very supportive of the Black Lives Movement, which was really great to see. But what I heard from several Black members of Fashion Mingle was that there were brands that obviously never had people of color in their marketing, or at least very often prior to that. And so, one of the things we want to talk about is what should marketing teams be doing beyond just hiring a chief diversity officer or creating diversity and inclusion departments. I really loved hearing what the head of community development for CFDA said, the Council of Fashion Designers of America, Joseph Maglieri. He said, we've entered a post-discussion era. No amount of social media posts will ever transcend taking real action. So what he's saying is we need to be able to tell the difference between a public relations campaign and real change that the companies are implementing into their businesses, their business model, but also into their leadership. And CFDA put out a very extensive list of what they're doing to make sure that diversity and inclusion is part of their daily business plans, but also telling fashion brands, we want you to do this too. So I'd love to get you what you guys thought about when the protests were happening and you were seeing the brands be supportive. E2, give me your feedback. How did you feel? Did you feel good about it, or did you feel like there was some some hypocrisy?
Well, I think there is some, I wouldn't say hypocrisy, I would say more of an opportunity, because now it's cool, because often we see through the media constantly that America loves Black culture, but not necessarily Black people. And to that end, what ends up happening is when it becomes cool to be woke, you try to find someone of color where you can kind of penetrate. So it becomes, how do we get secure, as they say in the culture, secure the bag, if you will. So I think it's an opportunity to say, hey, we want to tap in to get some of this money. And it's not about real change. And interestingly that you should pose this question, I was tapped recently to put together, I'm a behavioral therapist by trade, to put together a deck for corporate companies centered around diversity and inclusion. And what I found in my SWOT analysis is that they covered their bases by putting an X in the box of things to do. So for instance, it becomes a PR campaign to say that we've covered our tracks, but they haven't necessarily implemented those things. And then there's just a few things that have been completed. So the action is not really there. It's a precaution if they were called out.
That's really interesting. I want to get more into that and what you're recommending in your deck for companies to do. Eddie, you're in PR. You are, you work a lot with celebrities and athletes and matching them with brands. Oh, there we finally got Mark. Hey, Mark. And so I'm really curious about your perspective because.
Hey, you guys.
Hey.
How you doing, Mark?
Sorry I'm late.
I'm really curious, Eddie, about your perspective. I know you work with an organization in LA for Black professionals in PR. You work with celebrities and athletes to place them with brands in marketing campaigns. And so there has to be, you've probably seen the inside of this and, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So can you give us some examples of experiences you've had where brands have, I'd love to hear brands that truly are, what a brand looks like that truly is wanting to represent the diversity and inclusion within their marketing campaigns. And then what's a brand look like that's only doing it for PR reasons?
Well, from the communication side, on the PR and branding, the brands that are actually doing it are designers who are actually Black, Latin, Asian, all minorities. They're doing it themselves. Now, our fashion houses, they're not necessarily doing it, but what they're doing is, as E2 said, they're trying to be progressive and show they're open to not change, but hear where everyone's voice is. I don't know if you saw, right after we had our first panel, Netflix did a whole movie called The Remix Collection of Hip Hop and Fashion. And it went also, the whole basically it talks about what we're talking about right now, diversity in marketing and fashion. And the whole story was how all the top fashion houses did not want to embrace the culture of fashion. Even Timberland just had to release a whole, campaign about, well, we don't understand anything. We're a shoe based on this. Same with Gucci, same thing with Tommy Hilfiger. I mean, MCM, if you gotta get a chance, everybody, please go to Netflix and watch this movie. It's basically going to define everything we're talking about today. But what it showed was all the top fashion houses were copying or trying to recreate what Black designers, minority designers, LGBTQ designers were all making, and then copy it and call it their own, but it was not giving credit to the stylists, designers, the beauties. And what you find is, until now, the social media age, through the protests, we are calling them out now because they were not giving credit to those designers, to those stylists who helped create and really, really put it on it. Oh, Benjamin, it's called the Remix Hip Hop and Fashion on Netflix.
Okay. Remix hip hop in fashion.
So people like Dapper Dan, yeah, these folks are, and I know many other stylists, that we have worked with the communicators, they have worked to help change the mindset, let people know culturally, people of color not only can now only wear fashion, we can create it, look fashionable, and it will sell. So the question comes now to is, do you want to help support emerging designers? Or do you want to stay with the fashion ones who are basically copying what the emerging designers and independent designers are doing? So our job as communicators is to find the emerging designers and support them. Sometimes it's good to have all, the well-known ones, but who are the people we do not understand? Or use a stylist to inform someone that now we can help transform it. Dwayne Wade's publicist was doing a campaign with H&M. Mia's now with MCM. Dapper Dan is doing a partnership with Gucci. You see a lot of different brands looking to, okay, now they're not necessarily getting them a title, but they're doing collaborations, capsules. You have to figure out ways to knock on that door and says, either you're gonna work with me or I'm gonna create my own and go against you. But once you do that, unfortunately, now the culture has to support it, good or bad. We just can't always go for the one that's well known. We have to also go to the one that is not well known. And I would love for everyone to understand, please, please do not feel bad when you are working with an emerging designer or stylist who works with the designer, that if the brand is not at par, which you see to the Gucci, the Louis Vuittons, Tommy Hilfigers, I go on and on, that it does not have the potential to be great. Just like in fashion, it's all in the details and the passion and creativity. All they're looking for is the opportunity and the chance. That's it. That's it. So our job as communicators is we're trying to find a brand that gives them an opportunity or chance. If you don't believe me, ask Teresa after we had our Zoom call. She'll tell you. We opened some doors for Teresa. Now she's kind of like, excited because now these opportunities are for her with celebrities, athletes, team players. She's so grateful.
That's awesome. That's really that's exciting to see when emerging designers finally get that attention that they deserve. As I was doing some research for this webinar, I knew that there had been, a lot of controversies about how, major brands, like some of the brands you're talking about, Eddie, making some very embarrassing mistakes. And I just, what came up when I Googled it was like a whole bunch of stuff from 2019. I was like, where are these people? What? I mean, I was shocked. I'll run down a quick list.
Let the ladies, I'm gonna let the ladies answer this. And Mark can tell us too. Look at all the brands who just hired a chief of diversity executive of color to say, oh, we're really gonna change now. Sales and all that. And because they got some powerful women. But my question is, are they gonna let their voices be heard? Are they gonna actually put that work in? So I'm gonna let the ladies talk about that because I don't wanna delve into that too much from the male side. I let the ladies go on that one.
I would say even before then, when you look back at the history, I don't know if you all are familiar with the Battle of Versailles back in 1973.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
That is a prime example that we know that African American designers, you know, that helped establish American fashion within the international setting, that it has power. You know, they got a standing ovation. We understand the power of having women of color on the runway. We already know these things. So for that to be in 1973, you see clearly that, you know, it has the possibility to be successful and significant. And to now be 2020, we're still fighting the same things. So with having African American women in these positions now, hopefully it'll make a positive influence. But as far as them having their voices heard, I hope that they're not met with as much as resistance inside, you know, versus outside, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I want to welcome Dee Rivera. Dee has she has a brand called Latinista Magazine. She's done Latinista Fashion Week at New York Fashion Week, and she's worked with a lot of Latin brands over the years. And I think what Arkeah is saying probably happens the same with the Latin community as well.
Right.
It's difficult to get a model position for Latin women. Would you say that that's been your experience?
Well, thank you, Melissa, for having me on the panel.
You're gonna have to talk louder. We can't hear
you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you'll have to scream, I think.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna scream. Apologies that I was so late. I was having technical difficulties, but so yeah, I'm the CEO of DCG Media Group here in New York City, and I've been in the industry for a very, very long time. Prior to my career and starting my business in PR, I came from an editorial background, and so I was the first fashion director at Latina Magazine in the 90s. Prior to that, I worked at Modern Bride Magazine, which was pretty much, I was the only Latina in the whole editorial department. I honestly didn't hit me until one day it was just me and one Asian girl. And you know, I worked directly with the fashion director. But I wasn't seeing that until I said, wait a minute, there aren't any brides on the cover that are Latina or African American. And so I went to the fashion director. She agreed with me. She was French, so she was very progressive, and the importance of diversity. The African American girl or the Latina was always a bridesmaid, never a bride. And I addressed that issue. So I went to the editor-in-chief, and she looked at me like I had two heads, and she goes, well, that is not our demographic. And I said, well, you're incorrect. I said,
let me tell you,
one of my friends that have been married buys Modern Bride. Modern Bride was the magazine back then for brides. And she kind of like disregarded. So my fashion director said, if you want to do this and you want to change, you have to be the one to, you know, move on and do something bigger. And which I did. I applied to Latina Magazine. I became a freelancer, and I worked my way up. Within a year, I was a fashion director, and we did a huge bridal fashion shoot in Mexico, in Tulum. And I put a Latina on the cover, and I mailed it to the editor-in-chief and the fashion director of Modern Bride magazine. And within a couple months, they followed. They started putting women of color. And so I think that was my first experience of really seeing, wow, you know, there's something going on here, you know, and that was my journey in starting Latinista.com, starting my own PR company, and basically just trying to be a trendsetter and pave the way for a lot of Latinas. And so, you know, a lot of Latinas are not hired in PR. I was one that was, and I was always the only Latina in there. So my role in my company is I hire predominantly women of color. I would say 90%. And everybody else is very diverse. So, and I do that deliberately because I know that a lot of the women of color are not hired in higher positions. So my goal in my company is to empower women like me who maybe didn't have the opportunities that I had, and I want to give it to them. And I don't have them get my coffee. I don't have them walk my dog. I have them do exactly what I do, because when they leave my company, they're going to be hired for a big position, not an assistant AE, but that they will have a role to play in the industry.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Mark, as a makeup artist, I'm sure you hear all the conversations backstage, you know, when people are putting together ad campaigns. And how do you find in the industry that the brands that you've worked with, are they open? I mean, are most of your clients already diverse brands, or have you had experience with brands that are not, they're happy to hire a Black makeup artist, but not going to include people of color in their campaigns?
Right. I mean, it's always been a struggle. I mean, that's just what it is. From fashion to beauty, it's always been a struggle, trying to, fight for that inclusion. And back to what Eddie was saying, it's the same thing within the beauty industry too, with that that Netflix documentary, which is really, really great. Mm-hmm. Another contributing factor to not being represented, and just like Dee was just saying, is that they automatically think that, well, that's not our demographic. That's always going to be the first line of defense for them. Always, always, always. As if, people of color's money doesn't spend like everybody else's. Like it's really crazy. And it wasn't until those designers saw the Black dollar that they started pandering to, and I call it pandering because it still wasn't as inclusive as it should have been from the very beginning. But until these fashion editors of color and started going to, they were going to see the designers and their people and saying, hey, we are spending, we need representation. Well, not enough is spending, or just whatever, where there was always some type of pushback. So it's the same thing in beauty, until they really took a look at the numbers, right? And not just stereotyping or generalizing, I would say. That's really what it was. It was a generalization of people of color, right? Because if they really took a look at the numbers, they would see that they were trying to patronize the business, but either there was not representation, or maybe there wasn't a wide enough range, right? So with what Lancome did is, and I would say, not Lancome. Who was Lupita for? Lancome, yeah. Is they widened their range, and then, they saw their numbers go up. And so that's what all of the cosmetic lines have started to do. Well, we have these shades now. And it's like, okay, 2019, you have these shades now. But it's, it is something that we have always seen. It's something that has gotten better for sure, but it's always been, that's not our demographic.
Yeah. So it sounds to me that like it's been a transition, or an evolution, perhaps is the right word, where you had people in these brands thinking, yeah, we do want Black money. And so what do we, we have to put Black people on the cover of Brides magazine or these different products so that you can get that money. And now hopefully we're moving toward a more honest acceptance of just a diverse culture should be represented.
Well, initially, just to be factual, initially they didn't want Black money. That's really where it started. It started that we don't need your dollar. We don't want your dollar.
Yeah.
That's why we shop fashion.
Okay. So that is, and then that perception just kept perpetuating over the years of, well, that's not our demographic anyway. And so when they started
to the racist roots of
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because it wasn't that long ago when they didn't want your money at a
Correct.
Wasn't that long ago.
That's right. Yeah. And from the boycotting, bus boycotts, and this, that, that is how change was made. Is that they did start saying, oh, wait a minute, this is hurting the economy, and they are in a position to, build wealth for brands. So
I do want to
can I say
quick that
I have a question
what
too.
you said, Mark. That is why there's an Essence. That's why Edward Lewis started Essence magazine. That is why Latina was created.
Correct.
I say thank you because you were able to help trailblazers rise up and create something for the demographic that you think doesn't buy anything. And
that's right.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for those.
It gave you an opportunity to be a trailblazer. Yeah. Arkeah, what did you have to add?
I was just going to say, back in the 70s and 80s, we had fashion fair. Most of our African American and women, that popping orange, that was us, so we already knew that we had the capacity to generate and create wealth if we supported our own. Most of those products weren't made for us.
No.
So to seek out companies that provided that for us, we knew that we, have the opportunities to create wealth. So we have to get back to that.
Let's say this real quick, Melissa, from the branding side, we have to do better to also support not only the brands, but our models and beauty brands.
Right.
Color. The biggest thing I've noticed over my time period, but the history, we don't have media supporting and highlighting enough of not only the fashion brands, but the models, the beauty brands. I mean, New York Times did a great piece on the Latina women who have influence in, modeling. And they've done stories like that on the Black models. But my thing is more mainstream media outside of our Essence Latina magazine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
More, and I always try to make sure I will drag, peel, not kidnap, but make sure some top media come to certain events to meet not only the designers, but also the models, the beauty brands, because the media can create whatever we want to make it not just hype, but also sales. And I think media also plays a big part in the diversity because they do not like to cover minority models, brands. Think about it. What's her name? Just signed with Revlon. Megan Thee Stallion.
Yes.
I mean, now I can understand she's the hottest thing. The demographic is cool, but how can we get the media to bring more attention to her and other people of color who love makeup? I mean, trust me, everybody back in the day had the one makeup line when they had Queen Latifah, they had all this. Everybody was buying MAC. That's cool. MAC put it on the game. MAC sold out because it embraced it in the media, people of color. But okay, we got Essence did a great job showing all these beauty brands who have diversity officers and people of color making decisions. Okay, I need to do the same thing now when you get your models. When you hire the actual, Mark Harvey to do the makeup. We need you guys to highlight everybody and not just the brand, because on the brand is taking full credit and nobody behind the scenes is getting love. That's not, we got to do a better job of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that too, Melissa.
Okay, well, I want to ask a question because it really brings up a good point. Is you know, from a perspective of a white person, and for what I hear, you know, there is a discomfort with, like, is it rude, or is it you know, like, just like hypocritical or something to do content where you're just saying, here are some great Black owned brands or Black owned cosmetic companies? Or should it be more that here are some great cosmetic companies and it's also featuring Black brands? Or should it be both? Like, how do you guys feel about that?
I think it should be both.
Both, and not always brought by the perspective of, you know, Caucasians or white. It should always be from the perspective of the minorities as well to write those articles.
Okay, could you repeat that? I didn't get all of that.
Yes, I was saying it should be both, but also the person that's writing it should be from the minority perspective as well. And not just, you know, Caucasians or white saying, you know, these are Black companies and people to support. Okay, so make sure that your staff that's putting together the article or the segment is actually a diverse staff, and so that it comes across authentically. Exactly. Okay, that's great. E2, I'm sorry, interrupted you.
I agree with Arkeah that it is important that it comes from both sources so that it could have some validity. But to Eddie's point, when he talked about marketing and diversity and how imperative that can be, one of the issues that I've experienced is that I've been told, hey, nobody's going to, and I'm speaking from the designer experience, particularly in the luxury arena when it comes to shoes. Nobody's going to buy your shoes because you're Black at that price point. And we know that the Black consumer buys more Balenciaga, Gucci, Prada than any, and I've been inside the Gucci factory. You know, my shoes are made in the Tom Ford factory. But the resistance when it comes to trying to market it, I could not get my designs in high-end publications like a Vogue or Harper's Bazaar for the longest time. So I took a page or operated similarly to Dee, where I created a PR company and they didn't know it was me, called Patois Media. And then I would send someone else there, and then I ended up in all of the major magazines. And Eddie talked about designers of color not getting credit. I just had an interesting experience being the creative director of Harlem World. I'm always looking for emerging talent to highlight in the community. But the owner of that particular boutique said, no pictures. I didn't get offended because I understood where he was coming from. I would have a lot of white people come into my shop and they would take pictures of my shoes. You didn't want to buy them, but you were knocking them off. I even caught them knocking them off in factories. And in an interesting contrast to that, I had a lot of European houses and Asian houses fly in from their countries to carry my goods. So I didn't get into Harper's in the US, I got into Harper's overseas. I didn't get into InStyle magazine in the US, I got into InStyle overseas. So it took all of that, and even when I tried to pitch for funding, oh, your shoes are fabulous, but maybe they're just for a special occasion. I mean, who makes more flamboyant stuff than Christian Louboutin? And you're buying it. And a lot of these designer houses, it's more the branding. It's not that the quality is always even there. I know because I'm in the factories. I've been to the Hermes factory. So you can't tell me, and they have a problem when you're a designer of color who knows what you're doing, who knows the importance of impeccable craftsmanship, and knows their worth. And I think sometimes when you're of color and you speak out, it becomes a threat. So you can't tell me, because I love what Arkeah said about the Battle of Versailles. It's almost like, hey, we're going to do it in spite of you. We're going to show you who we are. And that's the approach that I've taken. I know my value, so I'm not going to cheapen it. If it's not for you, what I would do, I would have these elaborate showcases in Harlem, and I had a duplex and a nectarine tree that I would juice the nectarines using everything that I had, because when you're a designer of color, a lot of times what you are actually offering is your lunch, breakfast, and dinner because you put all of your resources into it. So when people would say to me, oh, that's too much, I would say, well, thank you for your time, and I would escort them out. And it's with that stance that the white media came, and also that the community centered around me. So you'll find when you come into Brooklyn, or if you come into Harlem, that a lot of the designers, they don't want you taking pictures. They want you to enjoy the experience, because we know that we're being knocked off. You say we're not good enough, but we're good enough for you to come in so you can try to make it greater, because you have the dollars for the marketing campaigns to get that type of exposure that we are desperately seeking.
Got you. Now, Wendy, you visual conductor that puts on a lot of experiential events in New York City with a lot of major brands. And you've had a pretty good experience with some of these brands wanting those experiences to be diverse, as I understand it. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're seeing companies start opening up to diversity in their promotions? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, first of all, some of these trade shows, I mean, in terms of doing market research and really understanding who your consumers are, two trade shows, well, before COVID, that I was really fond of, that I had the pleasure to be involved with, was CurvyCon. So it's all shapes and sizes, not to mention, you know, heritage. And then as, of course, BeautyCon too. And then you really saw who your consumers are. It's just like all different colors and all different types of women and men. And so you saw a combination of smaller brands, emerging brands, but you also saw some major brands, such as, for example, I mentioned before that I've worked with Dove, or you even have some other brands that are just catering to that spectrum. And so I think that's a really good way of testing what's out there and also seeing who's buying your products. And so I feel like trade shows such as that have been really positive influences in terms of seeing on that consumer side.
That's really good to hear. Well, definitely, obviously, the having a diversity team within your company now is very important. Some of the major brands that have had some crazy faux pas in the last year is putting swastikas on a handbag. What are people thinking? Doing a black sweater with like big red lips, you know, like a
blackface Gucci and Prada.
Yeah, and then one thing I was just totally shocked at was a hoodie. Let's see, it was H&M put out a hoodie. They used a young boy as the model, like he looks like about 7 years old, and it said "coolest monkey in the jungle."
Yeah, from London.
Yeah, like what? It's just shocking to me that I mean, it has to be because there is literally no diversity in the chain of command with the company.
It shocks me that you've gone through so many rounds in the art department, various departments, and nobody caught that.
No one caught it, right?
Ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's
and does show the lack of diversity. Yeah.
Eddie, you're muted. There you go.
They just thought it was funny, and that's the thing you find in fashion.
Okay, that's a really good point.
It's going to cause something, but it's just funny. People will laugh at it. They'll get the joke that we get
right.
It's not a funny. So it could be
offensive.
But once it leaves your office, it's not funny. And a lot of corporations and brands and companies do not understand that. The checklist that you feel is appropriate, throw that out the window, because it's most likely it is wrong.
So I think I mean, I think what we all have to do as white people is we have to start recognizing this within the companies that, you know, our own companies or companies that we work with. I think it's a really good tip, Eddie, is to recognize when people think something like that's funny, that's like a major signal that there's a problem in the company. And so that I mean, what I would love for us to do, because we have about 20 minutes
Melissa,
left.
I have a question.
Yes, me too.
I just want to piggyback on thinking that it's funny. That's what happened in the South with watermelon, with freed blacks. They grew watermelon, and that was that symbol of liberation. So the Southern society got upset. So they said, let's make fun of them. That mentality has permeated corporate America. And one of the things that really rubbed me wrong and still does every time I see it is that Vogue cover shot by Annie Leibovitz with LeBron James and supermodel Gazelle on the cover, where it perpetuates that damaging and destructive stereotype of the dangerous black man, quote unquote, running off with the beautiful white woman. And that was taken from a World War I enlistment poster. So if you ever had an opportunity to take a look at that poster, you will see a huge gorilla with his mouth agape, and he's carrying that white woman. And they have LeBron with Giselle in a similar hued gown, and his mouth is in the very same position. How does that slip through a diversity marketing team? And that particular poster said something to the effect of "destroy the mad brute," is what it said, in fact.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. So E2, you are actually working with companies right now on guiding them through the process of setting up diversity teams. Can you give us like, 4 or 5 different things that you really recommend brands do that are very authentic and will actually have real change, that instead of the superficial change that you're seeing once you start getting to know the brands?
Sure. The first is you can't speak or understand the psychology of Black thought without Black and brown people.
Correct.
Okay.
So you won't have to go through the guessing game if you have more diverse hiring practices. One of the things I was very concerned about and that I brought up was that what is the system of accountability if someone has a complaint? And when we think in terms of diversity, we're thinking about generation, people of different ages. We're thinking about sexuality has to be addressed, whether it's LGBTQ or a woman, which are often still not paid their worth or value.
Correct.
And some of the other things include ethnicity, race. So all of those things play a part in when it comes to diversity. So what I find in these companies is that they're just actually putting up things to cover themselves. But what is not only the channel of accountability, what are the hiring practices? Are you mentoring people of color to come in to your agency? Do you have some type of pro bono effort to reach out? Because there has to be a pipeline. So if you don't think that people who are Black and brown, quote unquote, are ready, how do you prepare them for the opportunity? Because they may have the mental capacity, but lack the experience or opportunity to prepare.
Okay. Yeah. That's something I was reading about, just the feeling that so many people of color don't feel like they even get a chance to
Big one.
Go up the ladder. Dee, obviously you had experiences. I mean, do you have any insight on how, you are a very outspoken person. I know you and love you very much for that. But so how would you recommend somebody who's not getting the opportunities that they know they would have if they were white? What do you recommend they do based on your own experiences?
So here's what I would share. Unfortunately, I was not treated as a Latina, even though I was. And so one of the things that I had to learn and at a later age is that, the way my parents raised me, I went to college, had private school. So my mentality, I already had, and I'm just going to be straight up. I already had an entitlement issue. I didn't come into any kind of job or anything thinking, oh, I'm Latina, I'm a minority. I was like, I am the smartest bitch in this room, and if you don't hire me, that's too bad.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I got hired all the time. I didn't have those issues.
Right.
However, it is later when I realized, wait a minute, not all Latinas are treated like that. Right. I don't know if it had to do that I had freckles. I don't know if I was passable, you know, that whole thing. But I had to realize, you know what? I have to stand up for my people, for Latinas, for women of color. So deliberately, especially when I was in Latina Magazine, I was given a platform. Mm-hmm. I made sure that all the photo shoots were diverse, that we did Afro Latinas. Mm-hmm. You know, we had to show that Latinas come in all colors, right? Not just the passable colors, right? Whatever that is. We come with straight hair, curly hair, all types of hair textures. You know, like we try to do that. The reason Latina did not, I don't know if you know this, but it closed down, is because Hearst Publications took it over. And what happened, as other people mentioned, they didn't have Latinas running the industry. I'm saying all that to say that for me, I really try to work with my staff, and I want them to embrace the concept that they are powerful, that they are women, that they're smart. Latina is secondary, because I don't want them to have that mentality in their mind or be brainwashed to go in thinking, oh no, you're a smart, intelligent woman. You've done the work, and you go in there like, hey, this is my job. And honestly, everybody who's ever worked with DCG Media Group, they're doing amazing things now. Why? Because I put them in the trenches. Mm-hmm. I mean, they know as much as I do, and probably even more now. Mm-hmm. But all that being said, Melissa, you know, I was one of a very lucky, I had opportunities, but mm-hmm. a lot of Latinas don't have that opportunity. Right. And I think that is why, even in PR, I got hired in PR at high levels. I was, I mean, my resume is very extensive, but I always got the job that I wanted. The problem was that I didn't realize that not everybody had that
same opportunity.
Experience.
Yeah.
So I took it upon myself to create Latinista.com, to create Latinista Fashion Week, because I was like, you know, Anna Wintour, I don't see a diverse thing on her masthead. I don't see Marie Claire having a diverse masthead on their editorial. So I created Latinista magazine. I wanted to create platforms. Another example, Melissa, as you know, we trademarked Hamptons Fashion Week. I go to the Hamptons every weekend. Do you see a lot of Latinas, African Americans there? Maybe Sag Harbor, but not really. So you know what I did? I said, screw that. I am going to create Hamptons Fashion Week. I trademarked that shit, and I did it. And I was the only Latina in Bridgehampton with the tents and everything, and we created Hamptons Fashion Week, and now it belongs to me. Other people from the Hamptons were like, wait a minute, OMG, like, why did I think about that? Well, it took a Latina to think about that. And, you know, and I partnered with Melissa, because Melissa and I think the same way. Times Square Fashion Week, my lawyer trademarked that. Why? Because I was like, wait a minute, IMG and and I don't have anything against them, but I was like, they don't think outside the box.
Right, yeah.
You're not
and that having that
what is next?
Outside of the box perspective.
And I was having this conversation with Melissa last year. I was like, Melissa, we need to do something out of the box, digital, live stream, boom. We partner together, and we're going to create something explosive. And you know who created that? A Latina.
A Latina. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I always tell everybody, like, Dee's got the most amazing ideas. Arkeah, you have to deal with, I mean, Hawk Models obviously has brands that you provide models for. And I'm sure you have like all different colors of models. Right. But obviously a big problem in the modeling industry is brands only wanting the specific look. How do your, like, I mean, it's got to be very difficult for models to the models of color to be confronted with this all the time. Is that a conversation that you have with them?
It is, some of them, that is their main concern. How much work is it out there for them? And I tell them, these days with how social media has influenced how some clients book, models and talent now, you do have more opportunities afforded to you. I'm always a firm believer, create your own opportunities. You have the means and the leeway to do that now. But yes, it is a conversation I have often. And it's my job to keep them encouraged and also be truthful with them, be honest and upfront with them. More opportunities are afforded now versus maybe 20, 30 years ago, but it's not to say that it's not getting better. There is work out there for them.
Okay, that's really wonderful to hear. And in fact, next month, we're going to have Arkeah back on talking, and we're going to be talking more about the modeling industry and getting more into that. So we just have about 5 more minutes left. And so I'd just like to have you guys, if you guys could just tell me what you think are some of the biggest obstacles or issues that are facing, the diversity industry, because we want these conversations each month to really be focused on solving a problem and bringing together a panel who have real world experience. Like, I love how you guys are just 100% honest, and that's what I want this to be, is just everybody being very, very honest. Do you have any suggestions for topics that we need to tackle? You can email me.
Okay.
Eddie.
Well, everybody can email me if they don't want to, me to be too rated or NC-17 on here. So that's no problem. I think the biggest thing is to be honest and open and collaborating and support of each other. What I find is we don't want to give the next person a helping hand because we may pass them or out. And sometimes you have to just be humble enough to say, it's not about me. Who can help you be a resource? I've already got somebody for Dee. Me too talk. Arkeah, I already know. I used to live in Atlanta, so I already know what she's dealing with. Me and her can talk about that. I talked to Wendy next week. Mark, I haven't talked to him. How can I be a resource to help everybody else? And then to Melissa, my biggest thing is be the media outlet that shines a light and creates change.
I love that. Absolutely. And Mark, I know that you've got a really great platform on your social media, and you have all beautiful Black women that you're always showcasing on there. Tell us, when you're do you have some kind of strategy on how you support other Black owned businesses, that tips that you can give everyone to make sure that we're all putting that in the forefront?
My advice is always to create your own space, right? No one's going to give it to you. You may have all the talent in the world, but sometimes you have to create your own opportunities. Don't be afraid just to put yourself out there. I have several makeup artists and estheticians that I'm working with right now that some are feeling just, this weight of this pandemic and thinking that, things will never get back to where they were with their services. And my thing is that, hey, you are your brand. You have to be your brand at all times. So it's not just about services. If your clients were coming to you, they were coming to you for a reason. They were coming to you because you had something, you were offering something that they needed or that they found that they couldn't get somewhere else. So, start offering another product, So I'm working with a lot of artists in creating their brands more than just services. Something that I ended up doing 5 years ago, and now I'm thanking the Lord for me having that foresight to say, hey, I need to leverage what I have done in this industry and give my clients, whether they're my clients or referral, or, you know, give them something that I cannot always personally be there to give them. You know, I can't clone myself. So, you know, make sure that you are able to give people a little piece or the experience of you through some type of product that you have to offer. So that is what I've been doing, is helping a lot of these entrepreneurs create their niche, you know, because that's really where it is right now. Everyone is trying to support one another. A lot of the big box brands are failing. You know, no one's really going into Neiman's and Saks right now. And so
it's a great opportunity for
people to, like someone just mentioned, market and sell what they know. And sometimes it does take a, you know, a person like myself or a person that assists in developing brands to show that person what they're good at. You know, sometimes they need a little bit of a, oh, okay, so that they can have that aha moment. Sometimes they are themselves so kind of stuck in their own box of, you know, well, I'm really great at this service and this is what I was doing. I'm a spa specialist, I'm a facialist, and that's what I was really great at. Well, guess what? You had so many other ancillary things that you were doing in that space. You were selling another person's product. You were giving them, you know, great service. You were consulting with that client. So you were doing other things besides just offering them a hands-on service. So it's helping them build. It's helping them build on that.
That's awesome.
And I want to,
go ahead, Arkeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, you know, real quick, as you know, the fashion industry as a whole moves towards more eco-friendly and sustainability things. You know, hopefully that becomes the main focus, and designers and brands aren't just catering to a particular ethnicity. You know, they're going to focus on what is sustainable, you know what I'm saying, eco-friendly, and that becomes the priority, and not, oh, this is just for this type of person or that type of person, but the focus will be on all people.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely noticed that a lot of, you know, it feels like the sustainability industry is like, it's mostly white people, or at least that's who gets promoted. But then I've really started paying attention this summer to a lot of independent designers that are Black that have just as much passion about it. Adrena, who was on last month, she's a fashion designer and everything she does is sustainable. So I think that that's a really important from a media perspective and from putting out, you know, content about sustainability. There's no reason why it shouldn't be diverse. And I think it just takes more effort to make sure that we're representing that when we're talking about those types of issues. Dee.
What I wanted to share really quick, because I know we only have a couple minutes, is that, you know, I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing, you know, commentaries. I do want to say that, you know, I'm going to be honest, you know who I experienced racism toward me? Other Latinas. Latinas hating on Latinas, Blacks hating on Blacks, trying to crawl up the ladder and then say, well, you know what, I'm going to screw you to get ahead. That is what I experienced. And so I don't put everybody in the same boat, because I'm going to be honest, my friends are very diverse, but most of the mentors that I've had have been Jewish, white, Black, Hispanic, you know, like I have everything who have mentored me. And that is why I am who I am today. Right. So I don't say, oh, she's white. I don't do that. You know why? I work with Melissa all the time. I love Melissa. I see Melissa as my sister, my peer. I don't look at her as a white woman. I know she's white, but, you know, I don't look at her like that. I look at her as from Fashion Mingle, you know, like I don't. So, and I know a lot of us have been through different experiences, and based on those experiences, we react to those experiences. So I'm not judging that. What I'm saying is that we have to support each other, whatever color you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to say as well, we have to make sure that, and I think this is, you know, back to just what this topic is about, it is all about perspective, right? We have to validate other people's experiences and other people's perspectives. And I think if these teams that may bring on that token Black person, you know, if they're really about doing the work, they will understand that it is all about perspective. And not judging, like you said, it's not, no one's judging. It's about,
I want to
validating that perspective and letting.
I'm just saying.
Right.
And that's something that, you know, I got a big education on. You know, once the protests started happening, I started talking to my friends in the Black community and started seeing people sharing real experiences on Instagram. And it was a shock to me because, like, I was attracted to work in the fashion industry because of the acceptance and the diversity. But what I realized was, oh my gosh, that's like window dressing. That's not real. I honestly didn't understand how bad it was. I mean, I grew up in the South, and I mean, I don't live in the South anymore because I can't stand what I have, you know, what I've observed in the South. And so knowing that that's actually a part of the fashion industry was really shocking to me. I'm just going to be honest. And, you know, and so that's one of the reasons I wanted to start work. I mean, many of you, you know, we've known each other for a really long time. And so I just thank you all for, you know, spending time with us each month to talk about these issues and just raising awareness. Because I really don't think, like, that's what I liked what the guy from CFDA said about how, you know, it's time for action. We can't just talk about this anymore. And the protests that happened in May it was pivotal for white people. And it was because I think because Black people started sharing real stories on social media. And maybe that's just like, we're finally at a point where people can just say whatever they want on social media and everybody sees it. So now we are in a more honest period. You know,
can I add a behavioral perspective?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, E2?
I just wanted to add a behavioral perspective to the topic. Behavior can be measured, it can be predicted, and it can be shaped. Those are the three principles that are imperative when it comes to behaviorism. And when it comes to marketing teams, a lot of the shift or consciousness on behalf of these corporate brands is because they are losing profit or market share. So if you see that there's a trend, and trends can have interventions interjected into them. So the quickest thing to do is to create a marketing campaign so you can increase your sales. So it gives off the appearance, authentic or non-authentic, that you are on trend to increase your sales. If that's not working, then we need to hire some type of brand ambassador to get behind us to make it look like we're on trend. I recommend going out and finding designers like myself and other designers who are right at the threshold, who have the celebrity clientele, who have media, who just need an extra push, or even those designers who are just brilliant and don't have the economic means. Give them the press that they need. So I think it's an issue of perspective. Now someone wants to knock at my door, not a good time. Perspective and generalization, those two words were brought up. But I think another word that should really be introduced is education, because a lot of the corporate brands don't know how to address it. And if you have that education, it helps you to leap over the hurdle of fear. And I think there's an inherent fear because Black skin has been weaponized. So rather than seeing the creativity, you see the color first. and that color then stops you from moving into a positive action.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's wonderful. And Mark.
And I did, that's a great, really, really great, what you just brought up, E2. I always would come from an educational perspective, right? Factual, giving these brands facts, giving them, showing them, okay, this is not my opinion. This is not just my Black opinion, right? This is, I'm giving you factual perspective for you to take and,
Yeah,
create a change in your marketing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, E2, I'm thrilled to know that you're actually working with businesses. And so anybody listening who actually needs to work on this at the corporate level, E2's obviously the guy to call.
E2Evans@gmail. And I want to say to Dee, thank you for Latino Magazine, because they were one of the first also that took a lot of my jewelry to use in their photo shoots and handbags.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wonderful.
Well, thank
wonderful.
you, Essence Magazine, because Essence is the one that made Latina Magazine happen.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you for all the attendees who joined us. We have our mastermind every Friday. And so we invite everybody to join us. We've actually got on the fashionmingle.com. You can go and you can actually see the upcoming topics. And I think we've got Eddie. We're doing one with Eddie in September on how you can use athletes and celebrities in your marketing, so that'd be good. And then Mark, I think you're on. Mark and E2 are coming up on a couple where we're talking about retail strategy and marketing, more about luxury marketing and beauty products. I've got a person from QVC, so I know people in beauty always want to talk to people from QVC. So that's good. Okay, well, everybody have a great weekend. As always, feel free to email me, Melissa@fashionmingle.net, if you have any comments or suggestions for people for panelists.